Good evening, Rinpoche here. I'm happy that people are joining in for our wonderful reading, nightly reading of Siddhartha by Herman Hesse. That tonight is part 3, and yesterday I was just so moved. I must say that I almost had tears in my eyes at the part where they're seeing the Buddha for the first time, have not yet received teachings. It looks like that will be this section. But I had such a swelling in my heart, and I thought, what would that be like to actually be there at that time and to have heard about the Buddha and to actually go there and to see him for the first time. And so I was quite enthusiastic yesterday. And today we begin again. Hope everyone is feeling well, and if you're not, please take care and do more meditation and more prayer for others. Even if you're not feeling well, please don't feel sorry for yourself. Think of others who may be as bad off or worse off than you, and do prayer and send them healing. It won't make you any sicker, and it probably helps them. So please consider that. So this is they followed the Buddha on his alms rounds. And now they haven't spoken to him or seen him close up yet, and we go on. In the evening, however, when the heat abated and everyone in the camp was alert and gathered together, they heard the Buddha preach. They heard his voice, and this also was perfect, quiet and full of peace. Gautama talked about suffering, the origin of suffering, the way to release from suffering. Life was pain. The world was full of suffering, but the path to the release from suffering had been found. There was salvation for those who went the way of the Buddha. The illustrious one spoke in a soft but firm voice, taught the 4 main points, taught the 8-fold path. Patiently he covered the usual method of teaching with examples and repetition. Clearly and quietly his voice was carried to his listeners like a light, like a star in the heavens. When the Buddha had finished, it was already night. Many pilgrims came forward and asked to be accepted into the community. And the Buddha accepted them and said, "You have listened well to the teachings. Join us then and walk in bliss. Put an end to suffering." Govinda, the shy one, also stepped forward and said, I also wish to pay my allegiance to the illustrious one and his teachings. He asked to be taken into the community and was accepted. As soon as the Buddha had withdrawn for the night, Govinda turned to Siddhartha and said eagerly, "Siddhartha, it is not for me to reproach you. We have both listened to the illustrious one. We have both heard his teachings. Govinda has listened to the teachings and has accepted them. But you, my dear friend, will you not also tread the path of salvation? Will you delay? Will you still wait?" When he heard Govinda's words, Siddhartha awakened as if from a sleep. He looked at Govinda's face for a long time. Then he spoke softly, and there was no mockery in his voice. "Govinda, my friend, you have taken the step. You have chosen your path. You have always been my friend, Govinda. You have always gone a step behind me. Often I have thought, will Govinda ever take a step without me? From his own conviction? Now you are a man and have chosen your own path. May you go along it to the end, my friend. May you find salvation. Govinda, who did not yet fully understand, repeated his question impatiently. Speak, my dear friend, say that you also cannot do other than sweet allegiance to the Buddha. Siddhartha placed his hand on Govinda's shoulder. You have heard my blessing, Govinda. I repeat it. May you travel this path to the end. May you find salvation. In that moment, Govinda realized that his friend was leaving him, and he began to weep. Siddhartha, he cried. Siddhartha spoke kindly to him. Do not forget, Govinda, that you now belong to the Buddha's holy men. You have renounced home and parents. You have renounced origin and property. You have renounced your own will. You have renounced friendship. That is what the teachings preach. That is the will of the illustrious one. That is what you wished yourself. Tomorrow, Govinda, I will leave you. For a long time, the friends wandered through the woods. They lay down for a long time, but could not sleep. Govinda pressed his friend again and again to tell him why he would not follow the Buddha's teachings, what flaw he found in them. But each time, Siddhartha waved him off. Be at peace, Govinda. The illustrious one's teachings are very good. How could I find a flaw in them? Early in the morning, one of the Buddha's followers, one of his oldest monks, went through the garden and called to him all the new people who had sworn their allegiance to the teachings in order to place upon them the yellow robe and instruct them in the first teachings and duties of their order. Thereupon, Govinda tore himself away, embraced the friend of his youth, and drew on the monk's robe. Siddhartha wandered through the grove, deep in thought. There he met Gautama, the illustrious one, and as he greeted him respectfully, and the Buddha's expression was so full of goodness and peace, the young man plucked up courage and asked the illustrious one's permission to speak to him. Silently, the illustrious one nodded his permission. Siddhartha said, Yesterday, O illustrious one, I had the pleasure of hearing your wonderful teachings. I came from afar with my friend to hear you, and now my friend will remain with you. He has sworn allegiance to you. I, however, am continuing my pilgrimage anew. As you wish, said the illustrious one politely. My talk is perhaps too bold, continued Siddhartha, but I do not wish to leave the illustrious one without sincerely communicating to him my thoughts. Will the illustrious one hear me a little longer? Silently, the Buddha nodded his consent. Siddhartha said, O illustrious one, in one thing above all have I admired your teachings. Everything is completely clear and proved. You show the world as a complete, unbroken chain, an eternal chain, linked together by cause and effect. Never has it been presented so clearly. Never has it been so irrefutably demonstrated. Surely every Brahman's heart must beat more quickly when through your teachings He looks at the world, completely coherent, without a loophole, clear as crystal, not dependent on chance, not dependent on the gods. Whether it is good or evil, whether life is in itself is pain or pleasure, whether it is uncertain, that it may perhaps be this is not important. But the unity of the world, the coherence of all events, the embracing of the big and the small from the same stream, from the same law of cause, of becoming and dying, this shines clearly from your exalted teachings, O perfect one. But according to your teachings, this unity and logical consequence of all things is broken in one place. Through a small gap, there streams into the world of unity something strange, something new, something that was not there before, and that cannot be demonstrated and proven. That is your doctrine of rising above the world, of salvation. With this small gap, through this small break, however, the eternal and single world law breaks down again. Forgive me if I raise this objection. Gautama had listened quietly, motionless, and now the Perfect One spoke in his kind, polite, and clear voice. You have listened well to the teachings, O Brahman's son, and it is a credit to you that you have thought so deeply about them. You have found a flaw. Think well about it again. Let me warn you, you who are thirsty for knowledge, against the thicket of opinions and the conflict of words. Opinions mean nothing. They may be beautiful or ugly, clever or foolish. Anyone can embrace or reject them. The teaching which you have heard, however, is not my opinion, and its goal is not to explain the world to those who are thirsty for knowledge. Its goal is quite different. Its goal is salvation from suffering. That is what Gautama teaches, nothing else. Do not be angry with me, O illustrious one, said the young man. I have not spoken to you thus to quarrel with you about words. You are right when you say that opinions mean little. But may I say one thing more? I did not doubt you for one moment. Not for one moment did I doubt that you were the Buddha, that you had reached the highest goal, which so many thousands of Brahmins and Brahmin sons are striving to reach. You have done so by your own seeking, in your own way, through thought, through meditation, through knowledge, through enlightenment. You have learned nothing through teachings. And so I think, O illustrious one, that nobody finds salvation through teachings. To nobody, O illustrious one, can you communicate in words and teachings what happened to you in the hour of your enlightenment. The teaching of the enlightened Buddha embrace much. They teach much, how to live right, righteously, how to avoid evil. But there is one thing that this clear, worthy instruction does not contain. It does not contain the secret of what the illustrious one himself experienced. He alone among hundreds of thousands. That is what I thought and realized when I heard your teachings. That is why I am going on my way, not to seek another and better doctrine, for I know there is none. but to leave all doctrines and all teachers and to reach my goal alone or die. But I will often remember this day, O illustrious one, and this hour when my eyes beheld a holy man. The Buddha's eyes were lowered. His unfathomable face expressed complete equanimity. I hope you are not mistaken in your reasoning, said the illustrious one slowly. May you reach your goal. But tell me, have you seen my gathering of holy men, my many brothers who have sworn allegiance to the teachings? Do you think, O Samana from afar, that it would be better for all these to relinquish the teachings and to return to the life of the world and desires? That thought never occurred to me, said Siddhartha. May they all follow this teachings. May they reach their goal. It is not for me to judge another life. I must judge for myself. I must choose and reject. We samanas seek release from the self, O illustrious one. If I were one of your followers, I fear that it would only be on the surface, that I would deceive myself that I was at peace and had attained salvation, while in truth the self would continue to live and grow, for it would have been transformed into your teachings, into my allegiance and love for you and for the community of the monks. Half smiling, with imperturbable brightness and friendliness, the Buddha looked steadily at the stranger and dismissed him with a hardly visible gesture. You are clever, O Samana, said the illustrious one. You know how to speak cleverly, my friend. Be on your guard against too much cleverness. The Buddha walked away, and his look and half smile remain imprinted on Siddhartha's memory forever. I have never seen a man look and smile, sit and walk like that, he thought. I also would like to look and smile, sit and walk like that, so free, so worthy, so restrained, so candid, so childlike and mysterious. A man only looks and walks like that when he has conquered his self. I also will conquer myself. I have seen one man only, thought Siddhartha, before whom I must lower my eyes. I will never lower my eyes before any other man. No other teachings will attract me, since this man's teachings have not done so. The Buddha has robbed me, thought Siddhartha. He has robbed me, yet he has given me something of greater value. He has robbed me of my friend who believed in me and who now believes in him. He was my shadow, and is now Gautama's shadow. But he has given to me Siddhartha, myself. The next chapter is called Awakening. As Siddhartha left the grove in which the Buddha, the perfect one, remained, in which Govinda remained, he felt that he had also left his former life behind him in the grove. As he slowly went on his way, his head was full of this thought. He reflected deeply until this feeling completely overwhelmed him, and he reached a point where he recognized causes. For to recognize causes, it seemed to him, is to think. And through thought alone, feelings become knowledge and are not lost, but become real and begin to mature. Siddhartha reflected deeply as he went on his way. He realized that he was no longer a youth. He was now a man. He realized that something had left him, like the old skin that a snake sheds. Something was no longer in him. Something that had accompanied him right through his youth and was part of him. This was the desire to have teachers and to listen to their teachings. He had left the last teacher he had met. Even he, the greatest and wisest teacher, the holiest, the Buddha. He had to leave him. He could not accept his teachings. Slowly the thinker went on his way and asked himself, what is it that you wanted to learn from teachings and teachers? And although they taught you much, what was it that they could not teach you? And he thought, it was the self, the character and nature of which I wished to learn. I wanted to rid myself of the self, so to conquer it, but I could not conquer it. I could only deceive it, could only fly from it, could only hide from it. Truly, nothing in the world has occupied my thoughts as much as the self, this riddle, that I live, that I am one and am separated and different from everybody else, that I am Siddhartha, and about nothing in the world do I know less than about myself, about Siddhartha. The thinker, slowly going on his way, suddenly stood still, gripped by this thought, and another thought immediately arose from this one. It was, the reason why I do not know anything about myself, the reason why Siddhartha has remained alien and unknown to myself is due to one thing, to one single thing. I was afraid of myself. I was fleeing from myself. I was seeking Brahman, Atman. I wished to destroy myself, to get away from myself in order to find in the unknown, innermost, the nucleus of all things, Atman, life, the divine, the absolute. But by doing so, I lost myself on the way. Siddhartha looked up and around him. A smile crept over his face, and a strong feeling of awakening from a long dream spread right through his being. Immediately he walked on again, quickly, like a man who knows what he has to do. Yes, he thought, breathing deeply, I will no longer try to escape from Siddhartha. I will no longer devote my thoughts to Atman and the sorrows of the world. I will no longer mutilate and destroy myself in order to find a secret behind the ruins. I will no longer study Yoga Veda, Artha Veda, or asceticism, or any other teachings. I will learn from myself, be my own pupil. I will learn from myself the secret of Siddhartha. He looked around him as if seeing the world for the first time. The world was beautiful, strange, and mysterious. Here was blue, here was yellow. Here was green, sky and river, wood and mountains, all beautiful, all mysterious and enchanting. And in the midst of it, he, Siddhartha, the awakened one, on the way to himself. All this yellow and blue, river and wood, passed for the first time across Siddhartha's eyes. It was no longer the magic of Mara. It was no more the veil of Mara. It was no longer meaningless and the chance diversities of the appearances of the world, despised by deep-thinking Brahmins who scorned diversity, who sought unity. River was river, and if the one and divine in Siddhartha secretly lived in blue and river, it was just the divine art and intention, and there should be yellow and blue, there should be sky and wood, and here Siddhartha. Meaning and reality were not hidden somewhere behind things, they were in them, in all of them. How deaf and stupid I have been, he thought, walking on quickly. When anyone reads anything which he wishes to study, he does not despise the letters and punctuation marks and call them illusion, chance, and worthless shells, but he reads them. He studies and loves them letter by letter. But I, who wished to read the book of the world and the book of my own nature, did presume to despise the letters and signs. I called the world of appearances illusion. I called my eyes and tongue chance. Now it is over. I have awakened. I have indeed awakened and have only been born today. But as these thoughts passed through Siddhartha's mind, he suddenly stood still, as if a snake lay in his path. Then suddenly this also was clear to him. He, who was in fact like one who had awakened or was newly born, must begin his life completely afresh. When he left the Jetavana grove that morning, the grove of the illustrious one, already awakened, already on the way to himself, it was his intention, and it seemed the natural course for him, after years of asceticism, to return to his home and to his father. Now, however, in that moment, as he stood still, as if a snake lay in his path, this thought also came to him. I am no longer what I was. I am no longer an ascetic, no longer a priest, no longer a Brahmin. What then shall I do at home with my father? Study? Offer sacrifices? Practice meditation? All of this is over for me now. Siddhartha stood still, and for a moment, an icy chill stole over him. He shivered inwardly, like a small animal, like a bird or a hare, when he realized how alone he was. He had been homeless for years and had not felt like this. Now he did feel it. Previously, when in deepest meditation, he was still his father's son. He was a Brahmin of high standing, a religious man. Now he was only Siddhartha, the awakened, otherwise nothing else. He breathed in deeply, and for a moment he shuddered. Nobody was so alone as he. He was no nobleman belonging to any aristocracy, no artisan belonging to any guild, and finding refuge in it, sharing its life and language. He was no Brahmin, sharing the life of the Brahmins, no ascetic belonging to the Samanas. Even the most secluded hermit in the woods was not one and alone. He also belonged to a class of people. Govinda had become a monk, and thousands of monks were his brothers, wore the same gown, shared his beliefs and spoke his language. But he, Siddhartha, where did he belong? Whose life would be he share? Whose life would he share? Whose language would he speak? At that moment, when the world all around him melted away, when he stood alone like a star in the heavens, he was overwhelmed by a feeling of icy despair. But he was more firmly himself than ever. That was the last shudder of his awakening, the last pains of birth. Immediately he moved on again and began to walk quickly and impatiently, no longer homeward, no longer to his father, no longer looking backward. And that is the end of part 1. I'm going to peek. Tomorrow we'll open that. Part 2. I'm interested in knowing what's coming next. Many blessings. May my capacity for compassion be infinite. I dedicate these efforts to complete and total enlightenment so that I may be of benefit to all sentient beings. May it be so.